Dr. Caroline Quach-Thanh is the chair of the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. She joins us now from Montreal. Dr. Quach-Thanh, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate your time. I do want to just sort of get at, is this in fact an evolution? Is this a change going from take the first shot that you're offered to our preferred option is an mRNA, something like the Moderna or the Pfizer?
No, in fact, it's been like that since the beginning. So, well, at first it was easy. We only had mRNA vaccines. And then when the AstraZeneca was available, from that moment on, NACI had said that the preferential recommendation was to use mRNA vaccine. But at the same time, weighing the risk and benefits. So again, if you were having tons of COVID transmission around you, then absolutely the best option is to take the first vaccine that is available. But given the safety signal that we've seen, we could not just put that under the carpet and say we are not going to worry about that and we're just going to use all vaccines similarly. But so we asked provinces and territories to look at their local epidemiology and then decide in which population what vaccine was preferable to use.
So it's one thing to say this now in a month where we're going to see 8 million Pfizer mRNA vaccines arrive, but I'm thinking about those who put AstraZeneca into their arms over the last month or so, people who do work in those hotspot areas, who are in communities that are seeing larger outbreaks. What is your concern about what they're thinking as they hear your panel say the preferred vaccine is the one you didn't get?
Well, honestly, the preferred vaccine is the one that gives you protection against COVID-19. The question is not there. The question is, if you are looking at two vaccines, getting the two, let's say, a week apart. So you would have a AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson today, and you know that in a week you could get an mRNA vaccine, because that's where we are now. There is this 1 in 100,000 risk of thrombosis with the AstraZeneca and 1 in 250,000 to 1 in 500,000 risk with the Johnson & Johnson. Would you take that risk given the week you have to wait? And as we move closer and closer to those 8 million doses of Pfizer, as you're alluding to, I think that risk needs to be thought out. It is an informed decision that you're making here. And from the beginning, when we looked at those risk and benefits, AstraZeneca versus mRNA even, we did account for the wait time that was expected. So we started with the maximum wait time being 7 weeks for a 40-year-old, and then decreasing 1 week per 1 week for people who were older, because we knew that in terms of prioritization, provinces would probably go down using aid bands. If, some provinces are not doing that, then it's different. But that's how it was calculated at first, and it was clearly laid out in the statement so that people could understand how we got to that decision.
And just to help people understand what they ought to do now, because you're coming out and you're using this language that says the preferred vaccine is the mRNA one. Should people wait for it, given that there's so many more of them arriving over the next couple of months?
Well, at this point in time, for the Johnson & Johnson, the question is not even on the table because we have no doses available. The 300,000 doses...
They're in a warehouse determining if they're safe to use, essentially.
Correct, exactly. And if that takes 1 or 2 extra weeks, then we're 2 weeks closer to getting the 8 million doses of mRNA that we're expecting. So I think the question that people ought to ask themselves is, what is my own risk of getting COVID in the next 2 to 3 weeks? If I'm working from home, I don't see anyone, can I wait 2 to 3 weeks? If I'm in the middle of a hotspot where transmission is happening right, left, and center, where my ICUs are overflowing, then I think it's easy to say the best vaccine for me is the one I'm able to get now, because even for the Johnson & Johnson, we know that there's a very good effectiveness in preventing hospitalization and death. And the Johnson & Johnson is also efficacious against the variant that emerged in South Africa. So, and it's a one-dose vaccine. So there are advantages for sure to having a vaccine now. But it depends on what's happening around you, and it depends on your own risk.
Do you worry about an equity issue where people who have to get it now are getting the one that you're saying isn't the preferred one?
We absolutely worry about an equity issue, and that's why we've said, we really want those that are at higher risk to be able to get this mRNA vaccine.
Yeah.
But then it all depends on the prioritization from province to province. I think that in some provinces where the incidence is quite low, we have more time to try and even things out. In other provinces where things are burning up, honestly, even if it is if you have a risk of thrombosis, let's take this Johnson & Johnson, you still have 499,999 people who will be okay and will then be protected against COVID. So that balance in risk and benefit is not an easy one to make, but I think it needs to be spelled out for people to understand where we're coming from.
We've only got a few moments left here, Dr. Quach-Thanh, but I want to ask about the age limit. So Johnson & Johnson now recommended by your panel for people 30 and up. Why not just 18 and up?
Because when we looked at the risk versus benefit, looking at risk of being admitted for COVID in an ICU or dying versus risk of thrombosis and going to the ICU and or dying, the age where things seem to balance itself out was 30. It's very rare, unless you have a horrific incidence, that you are going to have more benefits than risk in a person less than 30, because in that age range, it's actually rare that age group ends up in the ICU for COVID.
Dr. Quach-Thanh, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.